Thank you for joining us on this Friday afternoon. Before we get started, I would like to begin with a brief land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land where Pacific Northwest College of Art is located rests on the traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, bands of the Chinook, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River. We also acknowledge the systemic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many Indigenous Native American families today. As settlers and guests on these lands, we respect the work of Native nations, leaders, and families, and make ongoing efforts to center Indigenous knowledge, creativity, resilience, and resistance. I am Melanie Stevens. I'm an artist, writer, and educator, as well as one half of the curatorial endeavor, Nat Turner Project. Thank you for joining us. I will be moderating this brief conversation about mutual aid and community care. Time permitting, we will allow a few questions at the end, so feel free to drop these in the chat. But first up, I would like to introduce my esteemed panelists. First up, the subject known as J. Dodd, AKA Redacted, AKA Lady Tournament, beamed down in Los Angeles, 1992, and is now based in Portland, Oregon. Her professional literary career includes positions at The Offing, Winter Tangerine, and more, with features in Poetry Magazine, Oprah Magazine, Miss Magazine, Willamette Weekly, the New York Public Library, and several anthologies. She's the author of Mannish Tongues and The Black Condition featuring Narcissus. Her film and performance work has been installed and screened across the country, from classrooms to museums. She has been a Lambda Literary Fellow and Precipice Art Grant recipient through Portland Institute for Contemporary Art. She is the mother of Tournament House, a boutique ballroom house in Portland Kiki scene, where she manages and produces young Black, queer, and trans artists. Find her talking slick or in another dimension. Next, we have Ella Ray of Pool Resources. Ella Ray is a cultural worker based in Portland, Oregon. Through art history and a praxis of care, Ella Ray strives to create projects, environments, and programs that center Black alternative economies and the Black imaginary. Their work often takes shape as texts and questions that play with power and subjectivity. Ray's written work and projects can be found in Oregon Arts Watch, the Black Abbey Artist in Residence zine, Portal Magazine, and a forthcoming publication with the Harriet Tubman Center for Expanded Curatorial Practice in collaboration with Hank Willis Thomas. We also have with us today Jason Umtouch of Fires Igniting the Spirit. Jason Umtouch began Fires Igniting the Spirit as a culturally specific drug and alcohol recovery program for Indigenous people to help bridge the gap between conventional treatment recovery services. When the coronavirus pandemic hit, Umtouch went to work trying to connect reservations with needed resources like personal protective equipment, PPE, food, and water. Support needs increased further as families were displaced during the wildfires. Umtouch began making supply runs to Warm Springs Reservation in North Central Oregon and slowly gained the help of other volunteers. He continues to take aid to various locations in Oregon and Washington. Thank you, all of you, for joining me today for this conversation. I would like to acknowledge that you are all undoubtedly very busy right now, and I think it's important before we begin to note that being present on these very public platforms is no small feat during this particular moment in history. So again, thank you for agreeing to be here and be present and being so generous with your time. I really appreciate it. So to begin, I think it's worth noting that each of your specific programs, the Tournament House microgrants, Pool Resources, and Fires Igniting the Spirit carries its own unique ethos of resource sharing. So I wanted to hear from each of you, for you, what does mutual aid look like? And what form does that take in your current endeavor? J. Dodd?
Hi, thank you all for having me. I'm really happy to be here. So Tournament House Mutual Aid Fund, formerly known as the PNW Ballroom Microgrants. Since the summer, we've given over $37,000 to Black and Brown trans folks, mostly in this region, but simply because of sort of outreach and demand, we were able to help people in Detroit, in Atlanta, in New York as well. And so I keep saying we. I was talking to my mom about this today. I keep saying we, and it really is not a we situation. It really is me. And I don't know if it's a way of disassociating from the amount of labor that it is. If I imagine a we doing it, then it's like not so bad, but like it's just me. It's really just me. And like my family and my house is a lot of other things to support sort of the community and scene and themselves. But like from the seed money to the organizing to the graphics, it's your girl. And so it really has been, this sort of like feat of just sort of like being president of just to do it. But also I think that I benefited from just knowing people who were in need already. I didn't have to do a lot of research to sort of find people in need. And then even as I set up applications, sort of built these networks. And so with this round of funding, I sort of focused on the first half, giving it to Black and Brown trans-led organizations and houses first. But now we're still trying to round out the year with this last sort of 7,000 roughly to give to like individual folks who've been requesting since the fall. So yeah, it's just been this thing of, at first it was just saying that like this thing existed and so people were applying, and so as apply increased, asks increased, and then before I knew we had given $30,000, and so I like took breaks just to like for my own health and sanity, and like each goal was sort of met in these ways, and so now we're looking at like almost 45, and I just like don't understand because I like have never had that much amount of money ever in my life. And there's this thing where even like I definitely benefit from it and like have like no sort of qualms about like taking personal donations even during this time, but I definitely it's not a salary. It's not a job. It's not something that I can take like a percentage of in like good conscience. That's not how this works, And so I really do just sort of get by while getting by, but it is constantly surprising and mortifying that I've given away money that I've never held in my hand. Is that a good place to start?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Ella Ray, pool resources.
Hello.
Hi. Tell us what mutual aid looks like for you and how that's played out with pool resources.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me and letting me be in conversation with these lovely people. For me, up until about a month and some change ago, I facilitated Instagram-based resource redistribution platform, which sounds way fancier than it is, just stringing together words there, with my co-facilitator. Her name is Jules Cordova, and we created pool resources to encourage monetary and non-monetary resource redistribution. It began, and Jules and I basically didn't even know each other when we started doing this, so we got connected with each other. We knew each other in passing, and basically everyone within my network pre-pandemic, a little bit pre-pandemic, and then once the pandemic hit, we were all strapped for basic necessities, and we decided that we were seeing far too many people left out of kind of more formalized granting systems, more formalized mutual aid ecosystems, and we knew why it was happening, so we decided like, okay, what if we just start like a little Google form to encourage people, if you have something or you need something, ask for it with no questions asked. So basically Pool wants to encourage that people, how do I say this, that there is autonomy in getting your needs met. Pool does not ever want to put stipulations on what you ask for, and we don't decide what people do with their money. There's a level of anonymity. How do you say that? Anonymity, period. Thank you. And autonomy that we really strived to maintain, and also encouraging moneyed white people in Portland who need the pressure to be put on for mutual aid to be an ongoing, and not just moneyed white people, money people across the board, but a lot of moneyed white people to continue to give on a daily basis. So we really tried to formulate a little ecosystem where we were supporting people with various needs, and also people who didn't want to say, oh, I have these things to give, for whatever reason. We helped them get those out into the network. Yeah, that's what we did. It's temporarily, possibly permanently closed for the time being as we reconsider our own personal roles in the Portland mutual aid big world. I think there's a lot going on, and I needed to personally take a step back and figure out what role I want to play as a facilitator, and also I needed to get my bills paid. So yeah.
All right. And Jason, what does mutual aid look like for you, and how did that kind of unveil itself with Fires Igniting the Spirit?
Mutual aid is community power. So far, it's been on the shoulders of all of Portland community, coming out of their pocket. Whether that's going and buying the stuff and dropping it off at our various drop places, or donating to the PayPal or Venmo. Mutual aid has been a new concept like 6 months ago to a year. I had no idea what the heck mutual aid was all about. I always knew what mutual respect was, but I never heard of anything called mutual aid. And I truly honestly believe it doesn't matter what people you come from, we're giving people. But America has always been about taking. And so the idea behind mutual aid is there's a lot of interconnected things that play a part in teaching the world that we live in, that we can sacrifice, we can give. And we don't always have to be the takers that this country has been built on, whether that's taking freedom or taking food out of your mouth or taking your. And that's why we communicate in the way we do now. Sorry, hold on. You guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. That's why we communicate in the way we do now, is because the languages were taken. And that's why English language, and I hear English language being used manipulatively. As I've grown in this nonprofit weird community, like, so we were going to start out as a nonprofit, but it like, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to submit paperwork. I didn't know how to pay lawyers $275 an hour. I didn't know how to do these things. I didn't have the money, but I knew that there was a need. So that's why, I don't know where you guys got that intro from, but thank you. It's truthful. Maybe I wrote it. I don't remember. But I have so many conversations doing this work. Like, this is the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep. This is my job. And we've had over $100,000 in cash donations and at least $250,000 in physical donations, brand new stuff. There was a time where mutual aid was, hey, let's go clean out the attic or the closet. We were like, no, take that to the dump where it can be burned and given back to the land. There was a lot of white people wanting to donate all these used things. And we're like, no, our people deserve new, because the people that we're helping don't have anything. The indigenous people that we're helping, they don't have the access like we do in these cities. We live in a city where we can go to the store and buy whatever we want, no problem. We have abundance in these cities. And so the vision was, why can't these cities understand that they're the same communities that these reservation communities are? They're both the same. These cities, everybody that lives in these cities live on indigenous homelands. And so how do we start teaching that? That was another interconnected relation to mutual aid, is we could start teaching these people that, you know what, you're living on indigenous communities. This is our indigenous community. This is our community. And so how do we start teaching that and it becoming real? So every chance that we get, we're teaching that, there's a responsibility intergenerational responsibility, I like to say, that we've inherited things that happen on this land that we have to help heal, because the leadership of this country doesn't want to step in and heal it, doesn't want to openly apologize, doesn't want to make right about the treaties that were signed for peace, right? Peace. We still don't have peace. We still wake up with the idea that we were a culture that genocide was forced upon. We wake up with that burden every day. So we have to not only live with that burden every day, but we got to make sure our rent's paid. So we might live in subsidized housing, but we still got to pay our rent. We still got to pay for our bills. We got to pay our taxes. So somehow we have to make a living. So what FIT stands for is reconnecting not only with the culture, but with yourself, rehumanizing yourself, understanding that, you know, we can take care of each other. We can protect each other. That if we ask for help, that we can get it. It becomes real. And it is not like unimaginable. It is. We have so much access in these cities, in these small towns. But there's reservations like in Wombly, South Dakota. We went to Wombly, South Dakota during the summer, and we dropped off $16,000 worth of stuff that we wouldn't paid for at Walmart, or we've gathered along the way. And when we went over there, all the houses look like churches. Every single house looks like a church. And I've never seen nothing like it. And you have gang influences. So you have gangs that don't even match. GD Crips. I don't know, that could match. But my native people are having these things on their reservations. So there's an influence of American culture that's growing on our reservations, and it's a lost feeling that I get. Like, where did our culture go? Where did our languages go? Where did our warrior societies go? And that's real. If you go to those reservations over there, you see that everything that you hear about from our people, it's real. It's in your face. And then when I seen that they needed water, they have water issues on all the reservations. Just like here in Warm Springs, hour and a half outside of town, they still have the water issues. And there's still an ongoing major fundraising for that. They need $200 million to fix their water systems. But here we are sitting in the city. We can go take a bath. We can go drink as much water as we want. They charge us for it. So, I mean, it's like we had to put things in perspective. Like, I had to learn that, you know, whatever they ask for, we should get it for them. We should get it to them. Mm-hmm. And we have. And we haven't done it in a way where the needs are all met. We've been able to make an impact. But it's like the ongoing need is, for as long as my people survive, there's going to be a need. Until things change on our reservations in our cities as well, where people stop getting killed, and some real organized, loving communities start happening, this is going to be an ongoing need, I think. And that's, you know, how heavy that is to wake up with, like your cell phone just constantly going off about things that need to get done. And so mutual aid for me has been a process of growth, understanding cultures and people, and working with people that don't come from my culture. They come from Egypt, and they come from Africa, and they come from my old neighborhood in North Portland, Albina, and Alberta. And it hasn't been Indigenous people in my Portland communities that have helped me the most. It's been the different cultures that come from the city that have helped me the most grow. And like, I can keep going about mutual aid. Like it's unending in possibilities. It's like we're teaching these churches that you don't need to be no church savior or white saviors. We got so many people that want to get involved with this work that are white saviors that it's disgusting. Like, every time I get a chance, I say, you white people, all you white organizations with white leadership, you need to get behind your Indigenous and Black leaderships. We need to start hearing their voices, not yours. You want to show up and help? Okay, this is how you show up and help. You get behind every leadership that you can find in your communities, Black and Indigenous. I don't think they've heard me yet. Hopefully they will. I'm sure they're hearing it from other people too, I guess. But it's been heavy, like that burden. Like, there's a guy in Gladstone right now, a white savior type, that I just say, hey, look, man, I don't want no part of what you're doing, and what you're going to do, because he has no connections to the reservations in the Pacific Northwest. He has no connections. So he's trying to find people to give him those connections so he can build up his brand, his business. And I ain't with that. at all. Like, dude, you've been a part of you're a part of the problem. Like, we don't need your help. We really don't need your help.
Mm-hmm.
You're a business owner. Like, you can come out your pockets to help. That's as far as we need you, but we don't need you to go do these things. And so that's like, there's a lot of like polarities to this mutual aid. Like, there's people that are corrupt. There's people that are taking the money and using it for ways that aren't for the people. But you know what? In my mind, Creator is putting them through their own path, through their own places of growth. And so I haven't spent a lot of time figuring that out or worrying about that, because really it's none of my business. And it's like, there's so many ways that we can help, people grow. And I feel like we're in a time of growth and unity that was prophesized by my people, over 100 years ago, that we would be coming together through a great time of sickness. And that's what I think we're living through right now, is the unity is becoming real. But through any type of growth, there's always going to be struggle and conflict. We're going to go through a lot of struggle and conflict. We're going to have to face ourselves through every conflict. Then we're going to have to face people we have conflicts with, our concept, our government, whatever conflict, that comes about because of the work we're doing. We're going to have to face it, because we're going to get through it. So when I think about mutual aid, there's polarities. There's like a balance there of shit that we have to grow through and go through and hear about, and people that we come in contact with who don't have really good intentions. Like, their spirit and intent is about branding and self business growth, and that could like piss me the hell off. But it's like, I don't got time to be mad. I really don't, because it's about time of healing for me, and helping my people heal and understand they're not alone, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I'll end there, and that way I don't take over this meeting.
Thank you for that. I think that each of your projects, all three of them, are vastly different in a variety of ways, but one of the common threads that I see with all three of them is that they are swift responses to ever-changing circumstances, particularly within the last year or so, and speak to a kind of dialogue that each of you is having with the community. And I'm curious about this dialogue with the community and how you kind of stay abreast of that conversation and how it affects the programming of your mutual aid, of your programs. Ella Ray.
That's it. Yes. That is yeah. Can you say the last part of your question one more time, please, and thank you?
Yes. So I think that the way that your programs are, it speaks to a kind of conversation that you're having with the communities. And I'm curious about how those conversations, how you stay current within those conversations with the community and how it affects the programming.
Yeah, thank you for saying that again. I mean, when you're working with people every single day, when we were in the thick of pool, there's no way not to keep up, because needs change from day to day, or resources change from day to day. And it's about being actively involved in it's. When you treat mutual aid as transactional, that's when the programming feels kind of archaic, or feels like there isn't actually people behind it, excuse me. And I feel like with pool, we tried our best to, with every person that we were either helping meet needs through pool or helping meet their needs through another program that we got connected with, it's about being tangibly invested in these people as people. And I often stayed in contact with these individuals, understanding that, like, as the days go by, it might just be a person needs groceries one day, but that doesn't mean throughout time they're not going to need anything else from us. So to me, it's about relationships with individuals and understanding that, like, it is really hard to stay on top of all the different kinds of resources and resources that are needed, but it seems inconceivable to me to not be to not be invested in these individuals and invested in your community enough to be asking questions and relying on also other mutual aid groups to be learning what other people are needing. Like, Pool could not exist in isolation from other mutual aid programming that was happening in Portland. We were in conversation with these individuals and also trying our best every single day to adapt to a pandemic that was rapidly changing. It still is rapidly changing, and understanding that we were never going to meet 100% of everybody's needs, but it was our duty to be invested enough to get them as close as possible. That's something Jules and I always were incredibly committed to, was we wouldn't take on another ask until we got people at least to 80% of their goal. And it's that kind of investment in these individuals as humans, and then continued contact, which I also had the privilege of time to be doing that. And I understand sometimes mutual aid works much quicker and we have to just keep going. But for the time being, that was how we operated, and we didn't want to make Pool an island. We were also in situations where we needed help as well. So we were staying current and adapting our program by being in conversation with people and being in conversation with the lineages of mutual aid that came way before Pool ever existed and way before a pandemic ever hit, if that makes sense and answers your question.
Yeah. Jay Dodd, I had the privilege of kind of watching you build the Tournament House microgrants from the ground up over the past year, and it's been a marvel to watch. But I also know through that kind of witnessing that it's been a lot of work for you, a lot of like admin stuff, as well as like the community-based stuff, and you have been kind of doing it on your own. So I wonder within that process, if you built kind of a rubric or a kind of ethics of care in the way that you kind of approach this over time, whether it's your outreach to the community or even like, you know, self-preservation. I'm just curious about that because there's so much work that went into it, and it was very much like a project that you did on your own.
That ethics of care feels so fraught, and so I don't know if I want to engage that. I think early on for me, what sort of made this project hard was I saw other mutual aid projects that to me fundamentally were not imagining anything of themselves and were seemed very like clout building and like organization sort of like formation. And there was like a particular mutual aid fund that sort of sprang up that I thought was particularly like performative and empty. And then I realized how many people were involved in it and how little they were imagining to raise. And like I was doing so much alone and felt so alone at that time in the process, and then seeing them get like this fundamentally more engagement and whatever because all of these other moneyed institutional supported not Black people were doing this Black thing, and I was like mortified by it. And then they even had like a Black spokesperson like try to like defame my critique without acknowledging who was giving the critique. Me, another mutual aid organizer. And so it was this like sort of like public moment of like true, I believe, like performative sort of like clout manipulation that like really troubled me in terms of like what we were doing in terms of like mutual aid organizers. And so I didn't even really want to sort of like make a big deal out of it. I just wanted it to sort of keep happening, and that's sort of been the whole point. And in a very fundamental way, I really don't talk about it or think about it as an active part of my practice because I do not like how people have built identities around being mutual aid organizers. It doesn't feel like it should be a thing that we're seeking to be. You know, we should be seeking to have more sustainable ways of resource, not finding the best ways to be middle people. And so, yeah, I think that's also why I say we more than I a lot, just to imagine that it is a team effort still, even though it is not. But yeah, I think that the ecosystem of mutual aid is as empty and as meaningful as any other organizing space. I think that the labor, it's sort of like quote unquote cost me. I don't think I can't imagine what it paying off would literally look like or mean in this way, like personally. I have given money to people who've harmed me because, you know, they don't know better, and that's not the point. You know, it's not, it really isn't personal who sort of is a benefactor. And so it's this thing of like investing for me. I believe in investing in community. One of the reasons why I do mutual aid is because and for my community is because I can't always share space or share conversation or be able to, like, you know, educate or, like, you know, deal with sort of all these like small and large conflicts that have existed before I got here or exist beyond me. I'm not big on like teaching like the gazing eye about my life and my identity. So it's just a lot of parts of the community that I actually can't invest in, but I do believe in most of these people's lives fundamentally. And so creating this platform for me has like really helped me stay connected and as present as I can be to an otherwise human and diverse community that I can only give so much of my otherwise self to. But yeah, I don't know what it paying off would really look like, and I'm not doing it for that reason. It's just like the way I think I can stay around is by providing. Yeah.
As someone who is also kind of sort of marginally participated in mutual aid to some degree, I know that I've run into quite a few challenges, whether it's logistical, whether there are kind of like emotional labor tolls involved. And I'm curious what kind of challenges you all have faced with your programming, and how you have kind of resolved or are trying to resolve some of those issues. Jason?
So which issues?
Whether they're kind of logistical issues, admin issues, emotional, physical labor issues, what have you. I know that I've run into many walls, so I'm just curious about like what you all have faced.
So I think that this is like a spiritual journey. Like, we've been chosen spiritually to do this work. It's almost like a calling to change, a calling through the times. Like so there's always going to be struggle. When it came to working with others, I had very big trust issues. Like, we're connected with Snack Block and Symbiosis. I had major trust issues. But then Don't Shoot PDX showed up, and they showed me the love that I expected to feel, but I couldn't feel that with these other groups, right? And so I had to do a lot of self-growth and acceptance that there are people out there that are sharing the same calling that I am, that are sharing the same passion to help people. And so it's been about letting Creator help me. So Creator, I feel like, sends people to us, and we kind of just shut that down, like, oh, I don't need your help, or I don't want your help, or I don't want your kind of love. I don't want you to love me, or I don't want your validation. When really Creator is sending us people daily to help us in our lives and with our vision. And so with the administrative part, Creator has sent me some blessed people that know how to help me meet the goals and the visions that I have about this, right? And so it's been a struggle of learning how to speak in that language, that manipulative English language that we've been trained, brainwashed. I don't know if brainwash is the word, but like we've self-trained ourselves by college educations and books, and so now we know how to use this language real well, where we can say shit and people are like, what kind of word is that? You know, whereas people don't speak plainly anymore. And so I've operated in a way that's very truthful, very plain. What the expectation is, what the intent is, and so I feel like, you know, setting these boundaries out loud, not only with myself but with the people I work with, put me in a better mental health place, like a mental health mindset, because I could talk myself into a dark place with my mistrust and my burdens that I carry about healing from, you know, the generational traumas that it's my responsibility to address. And so, logistically, it's always going to be a madhouse because, see, I didn't have a storage. I didn't have a location space where people could drop stuff off. I didn't have a means other than my own personal vehicle to travel to all these various places when the fires hit, like in Southern Oregon, and I had to use my own truck. So I got my truck brand new with 87 miles. I've already put on close to 25,000 miles doing this work, and I've only had the truck for 3 months. And so my warranties are probably going to go out. And you know what I mean? That's the sacrifice. And so I feel like this movement requires not only self-sacrifice, but the intention of creating that change in our communities. And so I've never allowed somebody to come in and say, you know, we're not going to be a part of your vision. Like, okay, well, I'm going to have to keep moving. It's like, I don't know how to say this without sounding like an asshole, but it's like, if people aren't walking their talk, then I don't want no part of them. Like, if they're not really walking their talk with what their missions are, what the organization's all about, then I cut ties. And I have to do that to protect my peace. Because the only thing for me is that there is a need that has to get done, right? That's like, it's really clear cut, just like that. The need needs to get addressed. Let's answer the need for these people, whether they're Black, Native, white, Mexican, whatever their culture, their backgrounds are, it doesn't matter. As long as their need is addressed and they're validated, that we're giving them hope and then letting them know that they're loved. I feel like that's taken away a lot of the mental anguish that could come along with this, because sometimes you feel like you're not being heard, or sometimes you feel like the news systems and the communities that we live in don't give a shit, because really it's business as usual. There goes the USPS truck right there. United States Postal Service doesn't stop. It's still business as usual. The government doesn't stop. It's still business as usual. You know what I mean? And so there's agendas happening that's not talking about mutual aid or community needs or somebody who's struggling. They'd rather live on the streets in their addictions rather than clean themselves up and get themselves into a safe environment where they can live a long life. And so I don't know how to, like, I feel like things have been so smooth, whereas my biggest struggle is why can't Winco fucking fill a $3,000 order? I'm giving them money. Why can't they fill the order? Those are struggles that I face, like big bulk orders. And so like I don't get a lot of roadblocks. Other than like funding, we've never got a grant to do the work we've done. We've never got any grants. We just got granted 3 grants from 3 different places. So one was the MRG Foundation, one was, I can't remember the other 2. One was a train BNFS or something like that, and another one is OCS or OFS. I can't remember. So many different groups out there that want to give grants, and I have no idea. So they're called capacity grants. They're administrative grants. And so we're trying to set not only a budget, set the tone for a budget, so that we can keep receiving these grants to keep doing this work. Where it'll be written in our bylaws that whatever donations or whatever grants we get can be used for our people that we're helping. And so it's like there's pockets everywhere of mutual aid that can do the same things. And there is the vision that got me going in this is, why can't these cities help my reservations? Why is there a separation? You know, why are people doing land acknowledgements but not giving the land back? And so that's the type of area that I'm coming from, the mindset that I'm coming from, is that people can do this. Reservations can survive. People can survive. And that's why I listen to these land acknowledgements, and I'm like, man, I don't want to hear them no more. I don't want to hear these at your protests anymore unless people are giving the land back. They're doing the work to get the land back, to give back to the nations that are here. My tribe isn't even said in these land acknowledgements, and it's tied up. That no longer bothers me because I had to get through that. It's really not about my single tribe, because we were tied up before we were Yakimas, before the Treaty of 1855. We roamed these homelands all the way from the Oregon City area all the way up to Mount St. Helens. These were our homelands, our waterways on the Willamette River. And we shared that with other tribes. And so it's like, man, when I hear this, it becomes like burdensome. And so I had to do the work mentally to surrounding what these people are trying to do. I know it's like good-hearted, it's good intentions, right? They want to teach people, like, look, these are the people that were here before us. These are the people that are still here. But really, where's the work getting done? You don't hear shit about legislator. Like, we live in a city where they have things called jade districts. They have districts. They have pearl districts. There's nothing here culturally oriented for my people. We have to be guests in our own homelands. So when I have my Wilbrighty meetings, we're in a church basement, the very place where genocide was taking place in the name of Jesus. And so, like, these are the burdens I wake up with. This is what I talk about. The mental health part is like, man, I'm coming from a group of people that we carry things that the average people that live in the city do not think about or acknowledge or even understand. Right. And so it's taken me, I'm 37 years old. It's taken me this long to get to a place where I have the courage to address these things and reclaim. Whereas we're socialized to go to school, get an education, become the football player, become the doctor, but not address what the hell happened here in this country. Let's sweep it underneath the rug. And so I feel like mutual aid is the interconnectedness of mutual aid is teaching these other groups of people that, whose land they're on, what happened, why did it happen, what's happening now. And so I don't feel like I'm in a place of struggle. I feel like I'm in a place of like a spiritual journey, like I started out with. It's like the only struggle that I have is what I create, because there's so many things opening, so many doors opening for me to do this and keep doing it daily. Mm-hmm. Like there's no breaks.
Mm-hmm. Ella Ray, you mentioned that Pool Resources is in a brief hiatus. I wonder what is your plan for the future of Pool Resources, if any, or are you maybe thinking of your service taking some other form?
That's a good question. I think Jules and we just reconnected after also like taking some time from being in constant contact with each other. The thing about running that platform and a lot of mutual aid, I was lucky enough to run it with another person. We worked on that project so many hours out of the day. It is nonstop. If you let it be nonstop, there's always going to be requests that need to be looked at, email correspondence, answering Instagram DMs, and that's just a part of it. And I'm not saying that I didn't enjoy it, but it is a very emotionally and physically consuming project. So we took some time away from each other. Even like, I was like, I don't even want to see Jules' name on my phone. Just kidding. I love Jules, but we were taking a moment where our correspondence had stopped. We've just kind of come back together, and I think we're having very realistic conversations about whether pool should even be a permanent thing. I am not certain that we need to take up that space forever, and we are considering like, okay, what does it look like to transition that platform to other people, or are people looking for, and we're not experts by any means. I don't want this to come across as like we have all the answers, so now we bequeath the answers on to, no, that is not what I believe at all. But we're currently still trying to figure out like, okay, what's Pool 2.0, or does Pool 2.0 need to exist? Could we be using our social capital in our platform to be boosting mutual aid projects that need more attention, more love, more help, and normalize going to those mutual aid projects instead of pool. And I also like to raise the question, like, why do some mutual aid projects get the attention, the following, the consistency, and others do not? So maybe pool needs to, yeah, we're just currently trying to think about, like, is that the space that we want to take up? What other roles could we fill? And like, also, do we have the capacity to continue whatever the next iteration is of it? Because we had to take a break because we were very burnt out, and maybe mutual aid for both of us doesn't happen together. It happens separately, or it happens in the ways that we do it in our regular day-to-day lives. So I don't have a straight answer for what pool is going to be, but I am excited by other mutual aid projects outside of pool. I'm excited about learning more about mutual aid, although like Black people have been doing mutual aid for forever. And I want to note that there's like, even without the formalized name, there are people in Portland doing mutual aid, and I think we also have a lot to learn from that as well. That yeah, we're trying to take a step back and learn what we don't know, and then maybe take up less space on the internet while also redirecting that attention to GoFundMes that have been unfulfilled for the past 3 months. There are so many things that, like, there's so many places our eyes could be, and maybe pool doesn't need eyes right now. Although I still feel an urge to continue it, but I'll have to talk to Jules about that.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me that mutual aid has been this ongoing thing before the labeling, before this kind of weird framework that we've now put it in. I think that's important to note, always, always, always. And it also kind of makes me think back to what Jay Dodd said about this kind of lack of imagination around current mutual aid platforms and campaigns. So I kind of want to bring it back to that with you, Jay Dodd. And I wonder, like, what would mutual aid look like in an ideal circumstance where we kind of strip away those fraught platforms, those kind of problematic frameworks? What kinds of imaginations can we kind of seek in order to pursue this kind of endeavor? I know that's a lot, I'm sorry, but I'm kind of like going off on a tangent here. So I'm just curious, like, what your thoughts are on this.
I was like with you, and then you acknowledged that it was a lot, and then I was like thinking about that, and so I forgot. Like what are some like sort of like imaginations? Yes, I was talking shit about imaginations. Let me share some possible ones. Okay, I had to like translate your question into a way that made sense to me, because there's a formality and a clinicalness to this conversation that's really hard for me. I'm finding. Yeah, I think that I don't know. I think that the formalization of language around mutual aid has given a lot of people a lot of access to like a framework of care, and I think some people are like trying to run nonprofits without all the legal work and just calling it mutual aid. And I think that's going to combust and just create like a new fake nonprofit industrial complex of just like, community collective mutual aid things with even less oversight and even more, social clout and catastrophe. So there's that. And so I wonder sort of when the bubble pops, what will be, you know, the sort of new, or what will be the new types of resource sharing. Because, you know, I think, yeah, I think I've been sort of living off mutual aid for the last 5 years. Like I haven't had like a full-time job in like literally 5 years, and so I've lived off donations, like outside of like teaching and working gigs. Like I've lived off donations, and so like it wasn't called that all that time. It was just literally how I lived my life, and now it's like a way everyone has to live their life. And so it's this thing of I think the people who've been doing it for a while were able to navigate it differently, but I hope that this space and this time gives people who have had to sort of work differently more chance. Like I think the real goal of mutual aid is to destabilize the way people are reliant on their jobs and reliant on sort of even more toxic ways of maintaining resource. I think if people who have, you know, resource abundance are giving it up, and those who otherwise would have to be overexerting themselves for jobs are now sort of having these types of security, what else could they be doing? If you were can't work and are applying for mutual aid, and now like you don't have to work, that isn't your main goal, what else could you be doing? And so what was I doing for like the artists and the organizers and the parents and the family members and the sick who've been applying for mutual aid, when if we are able to fortify these resource sharing modes, what more will they be able to do for themselves and in their community, and how else could these sort of spaces grow? And so yeah, I think that sort of like decentralizing and really like deformalizing a lot of these conversations is going to be helpful, because I think that if not, we're just going to create fake nonprofits. And I think that, you know, the bigger, not even we aim, but the bigger we sort of want to be able to do, I think the easier it is to get lost into mirroring those power structures. And so, yeah, I think being super mindful of not reproducing those structures and imagining decentralized and really like low bar access points for resource sharing, I think will keep the mood going. I think even just like keeping it as a language, I think people have felt more empowered just to ask, just like to ask their own communities for money now, seeing the rise in mutual aid. So I think there's a destigmatization around asking for help, which I think is, you know, a huge benefit of this time. So yeah, continuing to destigmatize it, I think, is the most urgent work, and having resource sharing be a platform to get folks to do what they want to be doing instead of what they have to be doing and what is hurting them. And then yeah, making sure whatever spaces and ecosystems that we're creating, that they don't just reproduce the same things that got us here. Yeah.
All right. And I think that is a good place for us to end our brief conversation. So we'll now open it up for questions. And the first question here is, and I think Jay Dodd actually answered this, but I would like to hear from maybe Ella Ray or Jason on this. So with how much need there is and how many different ongoing endeavors you all take on, what does your infrastructure look like? As in systems, tools, which make doing it more feasible in healthy, effective, sustainable ways?
I guess, are they talking, excuse me, I'm just going to ask a clarifying question.
Yeah.
Is that meaning like the, like Google Forms, which we used, or Instagram, things of that nature, like technological infrastructure, or infrastructure The systems was me and Jules, basically, in the sense that we both have worked in communications to some degree, or like understand how Instagram works. And that's why we chose Instagram. And we knew a lot of people were on that platform. And that's one like kind of system that we use. But I guess I need to know more about like, what are we talking, like organizational systems? Are we talking like the formalized systems? I guess it's just a way that I haven't really like thought about the mutual aid work that we were doing. We were literally just doing it at some points and had to refine things as we were going. But I'm happy to answer that if that individual, I didn't see what their name is, wants to can explain more of what they're looking for.
Background?
Any other questions?
Oh, is it my turn or no?
Oh, yeah.
I
Sorry,
didn't.
yeah.
Okay.
Did you get the full question, or do you want me to repeat it?
No, I see it actually on my phone right now.
Okay.
Hani Ani, Hane, I hope I say it right. Hani Ani. She asked the question with how much need there is and how many different ongoing endeavors and how there is and how many different ongoing endeavors you all take on. What does your infrastructure look like? You asking me for my formula? Jokes. I'm just joking. I feel like there is there's some education that needs to take place whenever you do this type of work. Understanding people and understanding the needs and understanding that it isn't charity work at all. That, you know, the infrastructure has always been social media platforms. I was never on Instagram. I had like 2 pictures on there until mutual aid work started. I guess a lot of people are on Instagram, Facebook, and recently, you know, gaining attention from these corporations that are foundations or operate as foundations have take notice of work, and they always have money that they want to give away, and I don't understand all that. And so when we got to a place where we had to start thinking about how do we get organized, how do we, I guess we were organized, but how do we start getting it together to where IRS isn't going to come after me because I've had over $100,000 in my bank account. And how do I get to a place where we can accept money and it'll be written as a tax donation? So basically living and growing through a white supremacist system that was created by white people, and using that to help the people. And because that's all we have right now. That's the only way to access these corporation donations, because I feel like the need is growing so much and so fast that we need corporation donations like palletized toilet paper, detergent. Any households, if you look around in your house right now, anything that you use there to live is what these other people are going to need to use where they live. And so how do we keep that going? I think that transparency is important with your communities. Being truthful with everything that you're doing with your communities is a big help. Communities love that. They love to see where their $10 or $20 is going. And that's cool. I don't mind showing them, hey, look, this is where this went. This is where this is going. This is where all this went. And so we've been able to not only keep saying yes, but that's been like the motto. If a tribe or if there's a community member who needs their rent paid for 3 months because they got evicted during a pandemic, which is crazy, yes, hell yes. Like, you don't need to go to a nonprofit and say, well, wait a minute, we got to go through an application process. Or like if they go to NAIA, they got to go through a dang drawing system where they draw your name. Oh, you're the lucky winner. You get your rent paid for that month. No, it's been whoever's asked for it. And if I had the money, here, take it. Go get your rent paid. And so it's always been like unstressful when we're giving. It's been only take this. You're going to need it. Take this. This is good for your house. Take this. Just to clean up stuff. And that's how the infrastructure was created, was we don't create barriers within our organization or with each other about how we help people. We know that we're operating through a white supremacist system. We already acknowledge that. We know that. But how do we manipulate that system to help our people? I don't know. That could be healthy. I don't know. It could be toxic. I don't know. But I know that growing through being sustainable is, I think through anything that people create and they want it to be sustainable, they have to walk their talk and they have to walk in their own truth. And I believe that anybody can do anything they want to do if they do that. And everything will become real if they keep doing that. So I hope that answers your question, Connie.
Thank you, Jason. I got a clarifying answer. Looks like Honey says, I just was wondering what y'all do to make doing it easier to keep going. So Ella, if you want to circle back and answer that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that is also why we are taking a pause from it to figure out what makes it easier. But there's also a part of mutual aid that is, it's hard to facilitate these things, and really, I don't want to like bring a level of pessimism to this, but sometimes it just wasn't easy. But also I had been engaging in mutual aid facilitation before kind of pool resources was formalized. So I knew to some degree what I was getting into. And I think working with Jules, who is a very kind and very patient individual who also encouraged me, and I encouraged her to take pauses, to slow down. That was a huge part. That, like, when it was the thick of the summer and it felt like, I mean, I think it sometimes always feels like that, like everything is kind of going wrong in the universe. Maybe that is just the reality for a lot of us. But we were constantly reminding each other to like take a breath, to slow down. And then we essentially had to constantly like harp on the fact that we weren't going to always meet 100% of everyone's needs, and that didn't mean that we were failing. That was kind of like, I'm not huge on the word like self-care, but I am huge on the idea that like it is okay to pause and to remind yourself when you're doing mutual aid work that you too need to take care of yourself if you have the capacity. Not all of us have the capacity to take care of ourselves, whatever that means. But yeah, I'm really thankful for Jules. That is I would never call her a system, but I would call her an accomplice and a friend who made it easier to figure out how to navigate this world when there were so many white people making it increasingly difficult every day to just get basic needs met or to encourage a sustainable mutual aid ecosystem. So I'm very thankful to have that person, and I'm very thankful to all the Black people in my community who I could rely on and who instilled in me what they knew about just taking care of each other, what we've always done. So I'm grateful for that. And I don't know if that's a formalized system. That's just the privilege of my life to have those Black people who have taught me how to take care of each other.
Thank you. J. Dodd, what do you do to make it easier to keep going?
I can't answer that question.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that we have come to a good stopping place here. So I would like to thank the panelists, J. Dodd, Ella Ray, and Jason Umtouch, for agreeing to be here and to speak and to be generous with their time. And I'd like to thank all the attendees for coming to watch us talk. So thank you.
Thank you too.
Thank you so much.
Is that the it? Is that it? Because I can answer graduate admissions. I can say something real quick about that if needed.
Oh, that's probably Kate Baker asking a question.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, just real quick. So that is right. So in the beginning of this pandemic, the local governments they didn't know how to help their people. They still don't know how to help their people, but it's the same deal with tribal governments is they don't know how to respond to a crisis because being resilient and relying on themselves for so long, they don't know how to work together. And also the tribal governments operate as nonprofits, which is crazy, but that's a white supremacist system that they've learned to operate in. And so there is a culture being created on how to be self-sustaining and how to create these own mutual aids with their surrounding towns and cities on their reservations. And so the idea of teaching people in the cities that they are living in indigenous communities, just like those reservations are indigenous communities, they're the same thing. And so destroying that separation that's been created by this American culture, I feel like there is a ongoing need to start teaching or getting people in office that have an understanding about how to take care of its community people, because we all need help in one shape, form, or another. Whether that's financial assistance, whether that's food, whether that's childcare, whether that's a job. And these governments that we live in aren't people oriented. I feel like there's an agenda happening there that encourages capitalism and that keeps business as usual. How do we interrupt that? How do we just step in and say, look, you guys got to stop for 1 second and take a look at this. Our people's basic needs aren't getting met. We're struggling. And so I feel like that's a conversation that could happen with mutual aid and it could happen in these communities that we walk in. But it's having that courage and being bold enough to step in and say, look, this system is fucked up and it needs to change. It needs to stop. We don't want it anymore. But we also need to elect people who carry that same message. So I see a lot of the shit, like I see a lot of shit that's political, like Democrats. Like I don't fall in line with that type of thinking. And so I see that these people elect people and they expect them to bring change, but it's not. It's the same shit that we've been dealing with since the system was created. And so I think that there is a culture being created, whether we're helping that culture being created or whether we acknowledge or we don't acknowledge it, we're a part of it. It is creating a new way of life, a new way of living for a lot of us. So we got people that are jumping in, they're gung-ho, they're getting it done. Then we got people who are receiving the help, who don't know how to do this stuff for themselves, but we're teaching them and giving them hope that they can help people as well. It's like a ripple effect. I don't think our governments are set up to create those type of ripple effects. It's always been really unemotional for them, whereas we're getting all these emotions and anger based on the shit that we see on social media all day about what they're doing or not doing. And so I acknowledge what that was said too, that nobody responded to the need. They didn't. At a government level, they did not respond. It was been on the backs of communities like these people that I'm talking out here with to get the work done and do things, to step out of, their own lives and sacrifice their time and their spirit to do this work. And so how do we create that in these offices? I don't know. I'm not going to walk up in there and kick their door down and say, you guys need to change this shit now. I'm not going to jail. But I do operate with the sense that I don't put limitations on what we do at all. I don't put no limitations because it's unlimited. If we teach our people to raise their consciousness and understand that it's unlimited to what we could do for each other and do for the world we live in, and make it real in their minds, I think we could accomplish some great things. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you.